Joining me now is Senior Fellow and Chief Economist at the Institute of Public Affairs, Adam Creighton. Adam, it looks like Peter Dutton's softly approach is not paying dividends.
Yeah, certainly that's true. The coalition would be pretty disappointed with these figures. And of course, it wasn't just the news poll results that you were talking about then. The freshwater poll in the Financial Review basically showed exactly the same thing, the same trend. So that's two major polls on the same day, not a great start. And also the betting markets are now showing Labor as the favourite to win, whereas about 4 or 5 weeks ago, the coalition was the favourite. I always like to look at the betting markets instead because these are people who are actually putting their money on the line. They've thought about it. Polls can go either way, and of course they have a plus minus 3 or 4% error. But yes, to your point, since, well, at least in my view, since the coalition backed the $8.5 billion on Medicare, which Labor proposed, so same. The polling of the coalition has fallen. So I think they need to distinguish themselves more. There's not enough ideological
Is it too late
difference.
to do that now? Because you're right, there's not a huge deal of ideological difference. We've got used to the parties not being that far apart. Certainly on economic policy, you can pick some differences, but energy seems to be what's really a missed opportunity for the coalition. They could have fought this on energy policy alone.
They certainly could have. Look, the British Tories they've recently dumped net zero. I think that's very sensible. The opposition leader over there has come out and said it is just economically and even scientifically impossible to do. This is what Dutton should have done here. And then the election would have been a real intellectual contest, something to talk about. Yeah. I mean, right now it's going to be excruciating, isn't it? I mean, basically we're talking about a tiny tax cut on the one side or a temporary change in the fuel excise rate on the other side. That's basically the only difference, more or less. And because the coalition supports net zero, it does make it very hard for them to attack Labor on their energy policies, because ultimately they both have the same apparent goal.
And it flows into other parts of the economy as well, because of course energy policy impacts everything. So when you're talking about a cost of living election, when you're talking about what is inflationary, what's causing people pain day to day, that comes into it. So it just really hamstrings them on a number of fronts. But is it too late now to come out boldly and say, of course we've got nuclear, that's going to be 2035 onwards, but before then we are going to make sure that we've got plenty of coal and gas to have reliable, cheap energy?
Yeah, look, I mean, this is probably one for the political strategists, but I don't think it's too late. And certainly if their polling gets worse and worse, I think they really just should. I mean, if we're sitting here in a week's time and the poll's even worse, surely it's time to think about something like that. But you mentioned nuclear, and they haven't really talked about nuclear much. I think the opposition leader mentioned it once in his budget reply speech.
Labor seem to be talking about it more than they are, as an attack, as opposed to them actually promoting it as a way of safeguarding our future and making sure we actually do have cheap, reliable energy, as well as slashing emissions, if that's a priority. Now, you mentioned the betting markets. Let's have a look at how they're looking. Sportsbet has Labor slightly in front, $1.80 to $2.10. Majority government, $3.25. No majority is the hot favourite there, $1.30, and that's really the real fear, isn't it? Because we're talking about Green Labor coalition, Green Teal Labor coalition, any sort of combination there is not good. Similar odds with TAB, the Libs trailing Labor slightly, and again the money is in for a minority government. Yes. So that's I think what we're worried about.
Yeah, look, and that's because Labor did so badly last time. I think they have 77 seats, and the Parliament has 150 seats, so they have a tiny majority. They can't afford to go backwards much. The Liberal Party, though, I think has to win 22 seats in net terms to form a majority government, so that is a big ask. Then again, there are lots of seats that are held very marginally by the Labor Party. So, even a 2, 3, 4% swing is going to bring up a lot of seats. But of course, the swing is not going to be uniform. I mean, every seat is different, so we don't know how it's going to play out. But yes, sadly, it looks like it's going to be a minority government. And the real fault of that is, I think, that neither side really offers much of an alternative. And so that they are so similar, of course, they end up with the same number of seats, more or less.
Absolutely. Now, pro-Palestinian activists are planning to resume weekly protests in Melbourne with support from Members of the Greens, hardline activist Mohammed Sharab, who's facing a kidnapping and assault trial, called Peter Dutton a racist Timu Trump, saying we don't need a more racist government than the one we have. He also said this is a very critical time for us to go and disrupt those election campaigns. Appearing on the same stage as Sharab was Greens federal candidate for the Victorian seat of Fraser, Huang Trung, who said that Parliament is a racist, white supremacist, colonial institution that still has not grappled with the fact that it is illegitimate until it recognises sovereignty for First Nations people, Adam. But she wants to join this racist, white supremacist colonial institution.
That's right. Well, that's a good point.
Isn't that fantastic?
That's a good point, because the pay conditions are so good in the Parliament, so it's worth living with all the racism, apparently. But look, the first thing that jumped out there for me was, this is the Greens Party. Where's the talk about the environment here? This is all about Palestine. So this is just a hard left
we know
party.
Hamas are very keen on green policies.
Yeah.
Their emissions are next to nothing.
You know, so observers should realise this is not the party of Bob Brown anymore. This is a hard left party, which often is far more interested in these niche left wing issues about foreign policy than it is about the actual environment. That's a takeaway there. But the accusations of racism, of course, completely ridiculous and childish. This has been going on for decades. It's so boring. They really need a new word. They really do. It is.
They have misused and overused that word so much that it means nothing, which is actually not a great thing, because when there is genuine racism, and you call it out, it doesn't mean anything, because it's just, totally right. You could only cry wolf so many times.
Yeah, and calling Australia racist in particular is so ridiculous too, I think. I mean, it really is one of the least racist countries in the world.
Oh, absolutely. And anyone who's got any sort of, who's cracked open a book over the last 20 years or has travelled anywhere would know that. Now, let's talk about the Friends of the ABC, another activist group. They're very perturbed. They're crying poor on behalf of the ABC ahead of the federal election. And in an email to the anti-army, President Cassandra Parkinson has warned that the stakes are high for the ABC in this election. And she also lamented that there was nothing in the budget for the ABC. Nothing in the budget. They're getting over $1 billion a year to completely disregard their charter. I don't know how much more they want, Adam.
Yeah, look, it's just ridiculous that message was even sent. As you say, they get a huge pot of money every single year for doing nothing. I mean, frankly, the public case for the ABC, if there ever was one, just really isn't there anymore. I mean, we all have so much choice with our media consumption because of the internet. Obviously, we can read newspapers from all around the world. We can consume all sorts of TV all around the world. There really is no case for this institution anymore, sadly. As grateful as I am that they sometimes have me on, of course I am, the public policy case.
Well, we're going to bring you a clip of you on the ABC shortly. That was you on Q&A last week. But let's first look at this example of another twisted priority of the Albanese government and our universities, it must be said. The government is now strongly encouraging students in poverty-stricken Papua New Guinea to apply for scholarships to study, get this, climate change, gender studies and disability policy, when in previous years the focus has been on agriculture or medicine or education. Adam, how quaint that you would expect them to talk about gender studies instead of perhaps study medicine.
I know. I mean, these topics are so stupid. This is one of the poorest countries in the world. It's one of our neighbours. We do have an obligation to try to lift their living standards. These sorts of courses are just totally ridiculous. I mean, we should be educating them in areas that they can help their own country when they go back. And of course, this is a reminder of the US aid scandal in the United States.
That's what I thought of when I read that.
These foreign policy agencies are just chock full of hardcore left-wing ideologues who are far more interested in spreading their ideology around the world than they are in actually lifting living standards. So this is a prime case of that. And also, this is what an Australian Doge could chop if we had such a thing.
Absolutely. And this is precisely the sort of thing that taxpayers don't want their money wasted on. And these activists push their agenda without taxpayer dollars. And that's why it's being tackled in the US, but locally, we're really not hearing much from resistance, even from the coalition, about this. The Park Hyatt in Melbourne, a hotel here in Melbourne, has caved to online activists and cancelled plans to host a memorial for Cardinal George Pell, citing a heightened risk to the safety of its staff and guests. Adam, The left's antics, the history of violent protests, really do seem to give them this veto power. This is another example of the heckler's veto.
No, that's exactly right. Look, I think it's pretty weak on the hotel's part to go back on this. I think that they should be tougher. There's far too much caving to these people. I agree. We always hear about the dangers of the far right. It's actually the far left that are far scarier, actually.
Yeah, when's the last time a far left figure didn't have a book launch or didn't have an event because of right-wing? Yeah, it just wouldn't happen. And if there wasn't even a hint of it, you would have so many police there on the taxpayers' dime.
Crazy, of course, as well, except you.
Except me, exactly. Now, Adam, before you go, you appeared on the ABC's Q&A program last week. You said plenty that shocked the...
Apparently, yeah.
But I don't know why they're so shocked, because we keep being told that the audience is very much diverse, half
didn't get
left-leaning, half conservative.
Yeah, no one clapped me.
Not one single clap for you? OK, let's just have a look at 20 seconds of your contribution.
A net zero, which we impose on ourselves. It is, in effect, a huge tariff on our manufacturing sector. It's a huge tariff on our energy prices. And it's not just the power bill that affects. Of course, the cost of energy ripples through the cost of everything in the economy. And so the cause of the huge increase in cost of living is basically government, those two things I just mentioned.
Look at the look on that dude's face.
He was very upset with my answer. Very upset.
He was not ready for that. Oh, no.
It was just common sense, though, what I said.
Well, of course it was, but you need to give trigger warnings before you start spitting facts like that. You can't just go there. You did challenge the net zero dogma on the ABC. Were you sick of life? Were you wanting to be harassed leaving the studio? Why did you do that?
Well, actually, a few days later, the clip went viral on X, basically. A lot of other accounts picked it up. I didn't push them. I didn't tweet it out, but suddenly it appeared. So I think there is a real thirst for people to criticise net zero, and not just on the right, but in the centre, and even on the left. In fact, one guy who retweeted it, I think, is a left-wing economist, and he's like, it's great to hear the truth, finally. Well, of course. I mean, you can like net zero, but you still should appreciate that it is the source of our massive cost of living crisis in large part.
Absolutely. This is what I don't understand. If ideologically you believe this is the greatest moral dilemma of our time and it's worth the cost, then argue that.
Exactly.
But pretending like renewables are the cheapest form of energy, whilst we know the experience is absolutely the polar opposite.
Absolutely.
Is just treating everyday people like they're idiots. And I think people are finally waking up.
Let's see
if the coalition gives them a choice at the polls. Adam Creighton, thanks for your time tonight.
Thanks, Rita.